In this video, I'm going to talk about a Polish YouTuber called Dr. Pablo. I found out about Dr. Pablo through a recent comment saying to have a look. It soon became evident that he has watched some of my videos. He has built a full-scale helicopter that shares a lot of design decisions with mine. At a quick glance, the frame is similar, the tail is similar, and the control method is similar. As it's so similar, I thought it'd be good to have a look at it and make some comparisons. If we look at the blade design, Dr. Pablo chose the same blade design as mine. However, he doesn't have the machine to make this blade as I did, and he has done his best with a grinder. The leading edge of the spar was sanded with a grinder to a sort of rounded shape. I think the leading edge of an airfoil is the most important part of an airfoil, but if you don't have a milling machine, your options are quite limited. I do think there could be a way of doing it with a router though, or something like that. I bet there is an accurate way of doing it without a milling machine and possibly quicker. I chose to have a carbide milling cutter made to blade coordinates, then it was just a case of milling the shape into the 4 long spars, after milling the slots and recesses of course. But again, you really need a milling machine. Dr. Pablo used similar rivets for attaching the blade skins to the spar. You want these rivets to be flush with the skin. There is likely still laminar flow at this point over the rotor blade, so keeping this smooth is important. Not so important perhaps at the trailing edge, so protruding rivets are less detrimental in that region. I still chose to keep them as aerodynamic as possible, and I don't think there is a way to have rivets flush here. The leading edge using countersunk rivets requires the skin to be pre-dimpled, because the skin is only 1mm thick. You can't use a countersink like you would for thicker materials, as it will end up being too weak. You need to countersink the spar though to accept the dimpled skin. I bought some countersink drill bits for this application. I then made some dimpling tools to achieve an adequate dimple for the stainless steel countersunk pot rivets. I don't actually like my blade design. It'll be much better to wrap the skin right around the spar and do away with the leading edge joint altogether. Mosquito blades are made like this, and those are the ones to copy in my opinion. I don't know what cord length he chose, but it looks bigger than mine, and I think that is possibly a better choice. With a wider blade you could run the rotor slower, which is less power hungry and generates the same lift. You only need to run the blades fast to tackle retreating blade stall, which isn't important when you are only going to hover or go very slowly just above the ground. There are other factors like rotor response rate and blade coning angle that will be affected by a slower rotor, but I think it's the right decision. Might as well design for a maximum forward speed of around 30 miles an hour. The rotor hubs Dr. Pablo built are completely different to mine. He used steel and welded construction. Steel isn't a bad choice, but welded is risky. With a material that hasn't been welded, as long as you know what the material is, there is reliable data on its tensile strength, and the basic calculation is easy. When you weld a material, you change its strength, and you don't know what the new strength is. It also depends on the quality of the weld, of course. You could do some tensile testing on this rotor hub though, and get some real figures. I did that when I bought my tensile testing machine. Dr. Pablo has set the blade pitch to 7 degrees, but he didn't show if he set both rotors to the same. As he didn't show that, I wonder if he has set both rotors to the same pitch. There will be the need for approximately a 1 degree pitch differential between the top and bottom rotors. As he set the pitch by welding bits of bar to the rotor hub and drilling holes at an angle through the blade spar, future adjustment doesn't appear to be in his plan. How he's done the top blade strap is a little unusual. It's not really contributing a lot to the strength. If the top strap was connected to the strap the other side, it would then be contributing to resist the centrifugal loads. Also, the bolts would then be in double shear, so the shear strength is doubled. As it is now, I think it's single shear. Apparently, the clamping friction via the bolts can be much stronger than the shear strength alone. You wouldn't want to rely on that though, because if the bolts lost torque, the blades could shear off. He's balanced the rotor using the static method, but only span-wise by the looks of it. The camera angle appears to show the blades are a bit out of alignment. This is usually done with a string line, but that only puts the blades in alignment visually. I didn't use that method and opted to statically balance in the chord direction too. It's important to get this chord balance right, otherwise you'll always have vibration because the rotor isn't spinning on its center of mass. I discovered that doing the chord balance first is the ideal procedure. The chord balance has a large effect on the span balance, which you wouldn't have thought to be true. He's added the necessary weight to the blade tip using stick-on weights for wheel balancing, and then sealed the ends with expanding foam. It's important to seal the ends, otherwise there will be increased drag on the rotor. He's also very sensibly taped off the leading edge spar to blade skin join. I also did this and had an adhesive failure between the rivets. I used the correct adhesive, the 3M2216B/A, but I just trusted the instructions. What I should have done is some testing. I would probably then have discovered that etching aluminium would have resulted in a stronger bond than keyed aluminium. I solved this issue by wrapping helicopter tape around the leading edge like Dr. Pablo has done. I used a copy of helicopter blade tape that's sold commercially rather than the aircraft approved tape that is extremely expensive. You can see why a blade skin that wraps totally around the spar is a good design choice for the future. Dr. Pablo appears to be selling bottles of swarf from his build, if anybody wants to purchase any. I had no idea this had commercial value, otherwise I wouldn't have weighed mine in at the scrapyard. Actually, I could just make some more next time I machine aluminium and just say it was from the helicopter build. You wouldn't know the difference. Would you be interested in buying some general purpose? Some helicopter aircraft swarf from the Dixie Pixie? Here he is demonstrating how gyroscopic forces and precession are cancelled when you have two counter-rotating masses. I made a video demonstrating this 4 years ago, but it doesn't apply to mine or his machine. Because the rotors are hinged to the mast, they can't apply any precession cancelling moments to each other via the shaft connecting them. The only way they could is if they were solidly mounted to the shaft like the Gen H4. Then the shaft would have to withstand significant bending moments when the rotors are tilted at speed. For the drive, he's chosen a different approach. He's used chains. Still the same principle, but there is no gear reduction like I've done. It appears to be 1-to-1 ratio, which means the chains are going nice and slow. The reduction is done before this. That also means the drive shaft is going nice and slow, which is a good thing because it's long and has a large articulation requirement. There is a major downside with this though. As the reduction has been done before the chain drive, that means the torque on the tilting mast hinges has been increased by a substantial amount. The torque on my hinges is a maximum of 55 pounds-feet because that's the maximum engine torque, and all the gear reduction has been done via the belt drive in the head. His tilting head will have to withstand full rotor torque. Taking mine as an example, that would mean 385 pounds-feet. That's massive when you also consider that it's applied at the end of a leverage arm. It may still be possible to build this machine and hinges to take that torque, but it's going to have to be very strong and you need to keep friction on the hinges low enough to move the head for control. I do like the fact he's gone this route though, as it's a safer way to test the machine. My very high-speed dry shaft is potentially dangerous, and that's why it's shrouded, but it is the key to making this design work in my opinion. The engine he used to begin with is a Honda CBR 900RR, weighing 120 kilograms. I think it's also around 120 horsepower. Dr. Pablo had some issues with a gearbox failure and undersized chain snapping, so he increased the chain size and went to a Rotax 503. With the Rotax engine, the empty weight of the machine is 175 kilograms. Mine, for comparison, is 145 kilograms and is lifting around 4 kilograms per horsepower. His Rotax 503 is 50 horsepower, so it will be capable of lifting 200 kilograms. That only leaves 25 kilograms for a pilot and fuel. That means it's very unlikely he can get this machine to lift him with that engine. It's still possible though, but weight is going to have to be reduced and the blades are going to have to be much more efficient. With the Rotax 503, he's used two V-profile opti belts, which I think can handle about 10 horsepower each. He later changed this for an RK400 centrifugal clutch, which will definitely handle the power. He's now demonstrated running the blades at 470 RPM, and it lifted one side of the machine, which is not nothing. It's an achievement, probably lifting at least 80 kilograms, if not more. He's running the machine remotely from behind a tree, which is very sensible when you are using a welded rotor hub of unknown strength. I do hope he changes that rotor hub for something similar to a rotorway design. He's got sponsors so could have that machine for him, but you still need to calculate the centrifugal loads and build it strong enough to take that with a very generous safety margin. I get the impression that Dr. Pablo is a YouTuber who's built a helicopter rather than a helicopter builder who's built a YouTube channel, but he's enthusiastic and a happy individual. From an engineer's perspective, I hope he stays behind the tree until design changes for safety are made, or those rotor hubs at least are strength tested. I think if he strength tested the rotor hub, it will be a step forward. The 4 bolts holding the rotor blades on, guessing M10, should be capable of withstanding around 11 tons, but the extra 2 bolts for the T-section will increase the strength to some degree. I need more information to work out his centrifugal loads, but with mine it's 2.8 tons of load. I have 4 M8 bolts in double shear, which will take a maximum of 20 tons with just 8.8 grade. Though you don't design for maximum, a good practice is to use the fatigue strength of the material and then add a safety factor on top of that. I don't think it's a good idea to blindly copy anyone, and particularly me, so challenge every decision would be my advice to anyone thinking of doing this. If you know you are taking large risks but insist on doing it anyway, then remote testing is a way to do it in relative safety. I didn't do this because I had confidence in my calculations. It's well proven now, but my next fear is failure through fatigue. I do not know what the lifespan of my blades are, for example. I would imagine in the short testing runs I do and the constant visual checking, I would spot a crack long before a blade separated, but that's just my opinion. I suspect Dr. Pablo's helicopter build is more about an interesting project for his YouTube channel rather than a serious attempt at flight, but it's been very interesting watching his videos and I will keep an eye out for any new developments.